thinking on your feet is massively encouraged within military, because you have to have that, okay, what if this doesn't work? What am I going to do next?
Hi there, it's Emma from Pioneer Selection. We're going to be meeting with Jeff to speak about his journey in the military, but more importantly, exploring that journey from the military into the manufacturing world.
I mean, people say, oh, I'm a good leader, but it's one of those qualities you've either got or you haven't. You can sit there behind a desk all day, shouting and screaming and telling people what to do. To me, that's not leadership.
Jeff has got some great top tips that hopefully we're going to cover today to really understand how you can make that journey as successful as possible. And also for my manufacturing clients out there, it's a good opportunity to see what military candidates can actually offer to your business.
They could have completely the same skill set, but you're going to get that little bit extra from that ex-military person because it's bred into you.
Hi Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks, mate. I'm fine, thank you.
Good. Thanks a lot for joining me today for obviously a follow-up conversation. I know we had a chat the other week, but as I said, I think your journey from the military into sort of the manufacturing world's been quite inspirational, and I think it's a story I'd like to share with my group, my followers within the manufacturing sector, because I think there's a lot of people out there that are wanting to move from the military and don't quite know how to find their way into manufacturing.
Yeah.
And, I think from our previous conversation, you had some great tips off the back of it. So I think the best place to start is, your background and your story in the military. So do you want to just kick me off with
of course.
Your story in the military?
So basically, I joined the army at 17. I joined the infantry, went through the normal sort of basic training, posted to Germany at 17 years old. Obviously, it's a big eye-opener, as you can imagine. So, yeah, obviously I wasn't in the same boat as everyone else, should I say. And then further down the line, a few years later, I went across to the Ordnance Corps, well, the Royal Army Ordnance Corps, which became the RLC, Royal Logistic Corps, as a supplier specialist. Went up the ranks. When I got to sergeant, I actually went to the Defence College of Logistics as an instructor and was teaching there for a few years. Got me sergeant major. Done a tour of Afghanistan as a sergeant major of a composite logistics squadron. And I was basically getting to the latter stages of my career, let's just say. I was getting a bit bit stale and decided I want to go out with a bit of a bang. So I applied for special duties, passed, went into the teams based at Chicksands, and then done another 3 tours of Afghanistan as an interrogator as part of Defence Unit.
Wow.
So quite an interesting journey from 17-year-old private infantry soldier up to an interrogator in Afghanistan with a badge on my arm, and quite a journey, really, quite a journey.
I suppose the question, which is non-related to my industry, but everyone will want me to ask you, is how did you survive the training? Because I think I mentioned I was watching that SAS the other day, etc.
Yeah, I think that sort of
how different is that?
Well, different categories. I think that obviously with 2 SAS and those people, it's a lot of the intense sort of physical with obviously the interrogation and human duties. It's more of the on the sort of the mentality side of life. Can you feel empathy? Have you got the right tools of trade to delve into someone's mind and sit with them for hours and hours, days, weeks, months on end, and gather intelligence from these people, knowing what questions to ask. There's a thing in the industry called the tree of knowledge, which is you ask a question, a bit like interviewing, to be fair, mate.
Yeah.
You ask a question, and then depending on the answer to that particular question, there'll be more questions coming off it, like a branch off.
Yeah.
Obviously, in the industry, it's called the sort of the tree of knowledge. But amongst us, we excuse my French, we call it the bush of bollocks. So,
definitely transferable to
exactly right. And I've used some of the sort of the non-verbal communication, the soft skills, to sort of talk to people, to reading people, and gaining information from people. I've brought that across into my world as an operations manager. It's you're interviewing people during interview stage, disciplines, even just sitting down with someone and seeing what's wrong if they've come in there having a bad day or there's been an issue, and gaining information from that particular person. So yeah, there's ways and means of doing things, mate. You know what I mean? It's not all
Amazing.
what you see in the films, believe me.
Yeah, no, and I think definitely we'll come on to that a bit later, just talking about those transferable skills. But
Yeah.
what inspired you then to transition from military to sort of the manufacturing? Firstly, how did it even pop into your head as a consideration, and then how did it happen?
I mean, to be fair, when I was leaving,
Mm,
what I was thinking about and what I did early on was sort of the close protection side of life, coming into Civil Street, doing the close protection, um, maritime security, and all that sort of side of life. As someone who's been in my position would naturally sort of graduate too. But because of the sort of my logistics background as well,
mm,
I found it quite easy to sort of to write two different CVs, if you want a better word. One sort of
okay.
on the security side of life, and one sort of logistics side of life, supply chain demand, local resources, warehouse and distribution, that sort of thing. And obviously, with a manufacturing industry, sorry, it goes hand in hand with good logistics, good warehouse, and good distribution.
Mm,
And so, and being an ex-art major, yeah, again, it's that transferable skill set that goes in. I mean, being an ops manager, warehouse manager, it's like being a sergeant major again.
yeah.
You do the training, you do the hiring, you do the firing, you do the discipline.
Mm,
You make sure things are coming in correctly. You make sure things are going out correctly. So it
yeah.
doesn't matter what industry, whether it be pharmaceutical, manufacturing. I mean, with the logistics side of life, it's pretty straightforward.
So when you were at the point where you were leaving, what level of information was there available to you about manufacturing, engineering? How much was that sort of presented to you as an opportunity?
Um, well, to be fair, I think, as we said previously, we talked previously. I mean, on paper, the army's good at bringing people from that military life or adjusting that military life into civilian life. On paper,
Mm,
there's
yeah,
courses, obviously, with settlement courses. There's the career transition workshop we talked about, where you
yeah,
go away and you learn sort of how to CV write and interview techniques and things like that.
yeah,
And there's loads of shows that the army sort of feed you into, where you can go to like a manufacturing show where you've got different companies on standby to go and you down talk to them and talk about what roles they've got in their particular industry or what particular company. But I don't think it prepares you. It
yeah.
doesn't. It doesn't prepare you. It doesn't set you up and say, right, okay, with your skill set, you should be manufacturing. With your
Mm,
skill set, you should be this or you should be that. Because as I
right,
said, my main ethos and my resettlement courses were all gained or all built around security,
right,
first aid instruction, so I could go out and
mm,
teach people how to carry out first aid, maritime security, close protection,
yeah.
firearms, all the sort of the continuation training to get a career in security. To be fair,
I think that's really, really interesting because, as we've spoken about, there's a pool of, well, a massive pool of transferable skills from the military, and as we know, there's only obviously a certain lifespan that you remain within the military.
yeah,
And I think, as we said, the manufacturing sector has a labour shortage and a skills shortage at the moment, and there's such a transferable line between the two. But it's really interesting actually to hear that there's not actually anything that readily available to spark an
yeah,
interest, get people applying. Because I suppose at that point, if that would have been put in front of you, I suppose the question posed, if that would have been put in front of you, how do you think your career path may have differed from when you finished up?
yeah. I mean, it's difficult to say really because yet again, it's the career transition workshop. I mean, those guys they work hard. They really do to try and give you that help to adjust into that civilian life. But I mean, even the shows that you can go to see what different things are on offer, you've still got to want that career path.
Yeah,
And after, I mean, me personally, I'm doing 26 years serving, even though I had that logistics background, and I mean, quite a high background as well. I mean, I was a warrant officer in the RLC as a supply specialist, so my qualifications in regarding the logistics are up there. But
yeah,
a lot of people like yourself, they wouldn't necessarily say, you know what, I'm going to stick to what I know because it's completely different from that in the military than the logistics in civilian life. Completely different game because you're working with the military that you're setting them about a task. They've been trained to a higher level in regard to career course and things like that. Whereas when you go into Civvy Street, if you're become a warehouse manager, let's just say, the guys you got working for you, they're not trained to that standard. So everything you say to them is going to go, it's going to fall on deaf ears. So to make that transition and to pick a career that is going to help with your skill set is quite difficult. And as I say, it's not the case you don't get help. It's the case that you literally just don't know. There's no, do you know what, we should sit down and we should do this and you should do that, you should look at this. Even with the career transition workshop, it doesn't go into that intensity.
Yeah.
You know, I still think as well, I mean, with that experience a military person's got, with the discipline, the integrity, the honesty, the respect, and the teamwork as well, I don't think they should be pigeonholed into a industry, because they've got so many, you hit the nail on the head, they've got so many transferable skills, whether it be manufacturing, whether it be logistics, whether it be pharmaceutical, whether it be automotive. Most military personnel could walk into any of those industries, any of those sectors, and carve out a good career for themselves.
Yeah. I was just speaking to someone earlier today about apprenticeships and the stigma that apprenticeships carry. And if I'm being honest, since I've been, working within the engineering manufacturing market, I do think there's sometimes a stigma that's carried through the military. And I think in some respects, as I mentioned to you, it's very highly thought of in terms of all of those aspects that you said there.
Yeah.
Whereas other clients that I deal with maybe don't have the best experience. If you had to sum up the stigma that you've maybe observed, you've felt, or you've heard from, your colleagues that have moved on, what would you sort of say about that?
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest things is they're going to hire a Mr. or Mrs. Angry person. They're going to come in, especially, from yourself. Especially talking to future employers, potential employers, and I say I'm an ex-sergeant major. They expect me to walk in and start screaming and shouting at people immediately and marching up and down with a pay stick. It's look, I'm a realist, and I think that a lot of people have got that perception of ex-military people that they react best to being shouted at and being screamed at. And to be fair, it's the old saying, horses for courses. If you're on an exercise, you're in a theatre of operations, or even if you're on some sort of team sport in the military, the shouting and screaming goes hand in hand. Of course it does. But yet again, as most ex-military personnel would know, that wouldn't work in the civilian sector. Yeah. Because we're not built the same. People have not had the same level of training. If I walked into a place on day one and just stood there shouting and screaming at someone or a whole team, get this done, I want it done yesterday, blah, it's going to go in there and out there, and I'm going to have a mass exodus. Yeah, of course. So I think our future, potential employers have that sort of mindset, and I think that's the biggest sort of prejudice that I've sort of witnessed.
What appealed to you about manufacturing when you were leaving the military?
I think for me it was the sort of the different thing every day. Obviously, from my point of view as an operations manager, I can see the sort of the started article and the finished article. I think that's quite interesting, because obviously you wouldn't normally see that sort of thing from my background. But not only that, as I said, hand in hand with the logistics side of life, it's an industry that's forever changing, forever evolving. It doesn't stand still, and neither should it. Because yet again, as we talked about previously, if you don't move with the times, if you don't change with the times, you get left behind, and obviously then no one's making any money. And I think that, but that, yet again, as I said, I don't think that's just for me, just for the manufacturing. That goes for sort of all the industries that I've worked within since sort of leaving the military.
Yeah. And when you were taking those steps from it, and I know you mentioned a few of them earlier, but when you were taking that step of, okay, it is time, I'm leaving at this day, what were the steps that you put in place for that transition in your mind to be as smooth as possible?
Do you know what?
Were you conscious, or was it just...
No, as we talked about before, one of the biggest things is when you come into sort of, you sign off, you basically you hand in your notice basically. I got an extra 4 years. I didn't do 22, I'd done 26. Nature of the beast, what I was doing, the work we was doing, I was lucky enough to do an extra 4 years. But when the time was coming to an end, and you sign, before you know it, I mean, I signed the dotted line saying, okay, I've got a year left. Before I knew it, it was 6 months, then it was 2 months away. It literally, poof, it was on me so quickly. And yeah, fair enough, I sort of preempted the strike a little bit in regards to the resettlement courses. And for me, the big thing was that sort of moving the family, making sure they were settled. And the biggest thing was where we was going to move to.
Yeah.
Because
how did you decide?
do you know what? It's really strange because I'm from East London.
Yeah.
I'm no longer married. My ex-wife Sarah, she's from Essex.
Yeah.
She didn't want to move back to Essex. I definitely didn't want to go to East London.
No.
And sort of growing up, my sort of mum and dad moved around quite a bit because my dad used to buy houses so much. He was a builder, buy houses, so we'd move all over the bloody place. So I didn't really have any roots.
Oh wow.
So the reason we settled where we did is, the simple fact is, I was based at Chicksands.
Yeah.
And we absolutely loved the area, sort of the Bedfordshire countryside.
Nice. Yeah.
And we was very lucky. We actually found a place in a small little village called Moggahanger. Church, pub, and that's it. And it's absolutely beautiful. So we decided to settle in there. But even down to that point, we didn't have a clue until the last minute where we was going to settle. Which is, yet again, it's a really big hurdle for someone like myself who maybe hasn't got the roots or something. And it wasn't a case of I didn't have family, but all my family were living all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, it's strange, isn't it? Because it's, changing your career, it's changing your life, it's changing everything, which, and obviously you hear a lot of stories, etc. It can be obviously very overwhelming, and, that transition isn't easy. And I think for me, it's about, I mean, even I suppose if we, thought about it at that point where you signed on that dotted line and you knew you had a year left, what do you think maybe companies in the manufacturing sector, for example, could do in that year? Would there be, is there anything you think they could do in that year to support people who are trying to come out of the military to that area?
No, I think that'd be quite difficult because, as we said to talk about earlier, I mean, one, you don't really know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And so, well, most people don't. I mean, some people have got it mapped out in their head. Okay, I'm going to come out, I'm going to go into manufacturing, and that's it. As I said, my career was can be completely different to what I'm doing now. And yet again, there's nothing that really sort of a company could do on your last 3 months because you're still serving soldier or still serving airman or still serving seaman or you know what I mean, or helicopter pilot or whatever. So there's not really a lot they could do. I think the biggest thing is, for me, is if I could turn back the clock, what I'd have liked from the advice is the silly things like make sure you go and sign on, make sure you go to the Social Security. And it's not because you want to claim money, it's because you've got to make sure that your national insurance is being paid. That sort of thing. Because once you get out, if you haven't got a job to walk into, that's not being paid. But you don't get told this. So that's one of the things, and it's a silly thing. I mean, doctors, I had to go and sign on for a doctor's for the first time. Never had a doctor's as an adult. I never had a doctor because I was 17 when I joined, and I was mid-40s when I left. So it's crazy. These are the little bits and pieces that you're not really prepared for.
That make it bigger. No, of course.
That make that transition quite challenging and quite difficult.
So we mentioned earlier about transferable skills and the experience that I suppose you gain. And obviously, clearly, there's different parts of the military, so you gain different experience. But if we maybe touch on that. So what skills from the military would you say have been most valuable and transferable for you into the role that you're in now?
Okay. Definitely things like teamwork. I know some employers might look at it and say, well, you can work well as a team, but teamwork and adaptability. If you say to an employer, I work well as a team, I mean, I think we discussed this previously, where they might have their mind, well, they work as a team, but not as an individual. You've got to think that the military train you to work as a team constantly, but if that team breaks down, you need to have your own initiative to go, right, okay, well, that's not working. We need to come up with plan B, C, D, E really quickly. And that's done from your own initiative. So initiative is a massive part of any ex-military person's psyche. It really is. It's a massive part of it. So honesty, big thing in the military. I mean, it's, if you can't be trusted, you know, I mean, why is someone, you've got to make sure that the person next to you, left, right, forward and back, trust you implicitly. you work with people, but you live with these people as well. And you've probably heard stories in the past, sort of military people, sort of, if they haven't got that honesty about them, they won't sort of fit into a team, and it's a real issue for some people.
Yeah. Just on the teamwork one, I remember when I spoke to you last time, you said something that stuck with me, that obviously there's no I in team, but you were sort of saying that, you know, it's true teamwork, because a lot of people say, I'm a team player. But can you just expand on that slightly, because that was something that sort of stuck with me from when we had that brief chat.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the teamwork side of life is second to none. You'll put your life on the line for the guy or girl on the left or right of you. So that brings a whole new level to the meaning teamwork. So I mean, when I say to my guys, like, sort of, let's work together as a team, I don't mean sort of, okay, helping each other pick out a couple of trays. I mean really helping each other as a teamwork. If someone's finished their job for the day and they've literally been told, okay, after that you can knock off, it's literally putting your work down, finishing your work, and someone said, you know what, I'm going to go and give him or her a hand, because they're not going to finish on time otherwise. But that's what I call teamwork. Not, oh, I'm a team player, I turn up for work on time, oh yeah, I'll pick that up for you if you drop it. That's not teamwork, that's still individuality. But proper teamwork goes a long way. And as I say, most ex-military people, 99.9% of ex-military personnel will have that inbred into them, as well as I said before, the integrity, the honesty, the empathy, the individuality, the ability to think on their feet as well. That's one of the things I find quite different between sort of ex-military and some civilian people.
Yeah. Just on, because interestingly, something that I encounter quite a bit when I speak to my manufacturing clients, where it hasn't worked as effectively when they've taken someone from the military, and I think we had a chat about it previously, was the initiative piece.
Yeah.
So they actually said that in certain circumstances, all of those things that you said, 100% they have, but they struggle with the initiative piece, because the way they see it is that it's very set. Their day, you know, what they do in the military is very set. They don't go outside of that. Whereas in manufacturing and the way manufacturing is evolving, there's, you know, this continuous improvement mindset. There's this, what could I go and do to improve that? What are your views on that? Because again, I think that's a bit of a perception that people have built where they've had a bad experience. How would you? Is that right? Is that something you would change?
I mean, it's the same with everything. I mean, you're going to get exceptions. Yeah, I'm not sitting here and saying that everyone who's ex-military or 100% have got all those values inbred into them. Some people haven't. That's life. But I'm very surprised that when sort of employers turn and say that they didn't show the initiative, because there are set things in the military background. There are ways and means doing things. I'll just give you an example. The way that we handle weapons, the way that we do mat reading, there is set precedents. Of course there is. But thinking on your feet is massively encouraged within the military, because you have to have that. Okay, what if this doesn't work? What am I going to do next? And maybe I'm lucky. The people I've served with over the years, I can't remember sort of the people that I've worked with. I've seen a couple, of course I have, but the people that I've worked with, I've never come across anyone who couldn't think on their feet, haven't got that initiative. And the other thing I notice as well about sort of in the civilian side is the way people are managed.
Yeah,
I think that goes a long way. As I mentioned earlier, you couldn't just walk into a place and start shouting and screaming. But I've seen with my own eyes some civilian managers that work like that. They'll stand there, shout and scream, or they can't manage a particular person. They won't give them the time. Someone makes a mistake, that's it. End of days. They don't want to spend no more time on them. And I think that's the wrong thing. I think investment in people is major for any industry, especially manufacturing, because you're right what you say, because it is that constant growth, that constant change. You have to be able to IIP, you have to invest in your people, because that's the biggest commodity that any company's got, really. It's not what you sell, it's the people that are making the stuff for you to sell. That's the biggest commodity. So if you don't invest in those people, or you don't manage them correctly, you might not get the best out of them.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's a word that they're using, but the context of the word.
Yeah, I mean, people like to use buzzwords, don't they?
It's probably something else. It sounds like that maybe is underlying that. And like you said, it's whether that they need a little bit more time. And it is, you know, as you said, it is a big transition. It's not something that is easy, and I think, you know, acknowledging that. But in my belief, you can train skills, but you can't train values and, you know, work ethic and teamwork. You know, that's the stuff that you can't buy.
No, you're bang on, mate. Yeah, you're bang on.
If I can get that, I'm like,
Yeah,
I'll train anything else. And I,
that's it. Yeah. As I said before, I've done a lot of instructing and things like that. So sort of public speaking, briefing teams. And when I'm teaching, I mean, when I'm instructing, it comes quite easy for me.
yeah,
And to stand up and talk and things like that. And some people say, oh, well, let's put this person onto a instructor course or a management course. But some people don't want that because they haven't got that skill set. And as I said before, you can give someone the tools to do it, but if they haven't got that inside them, if they haven't got that natural ability to do that, you can't teach it. You simply can't teach that. That's either they've either got that value or they haven't.
you were talking about there your, you know, and obviously you were a sergeant, and you know you were high up, and you know your leadership.
Excuse me, sergeant. I was a bloody sergeant major, Mrs.
Oh, sergeant major. Sorry. Terms. We're not. Sorry, okay with the hierarchy. So how do you feel your leadership experience has sort of shaped your role now, and what do you think that's allowed you to do?
I think one of the things is, again, going back to that word adaptability. As I said, I couldn't walk into a company and start screaming and shouting. So you've got to know your audience. You've got to know your team. And the easiest way I found to do it is sort of integrate yourself into that team, learn what they do, because they're the experts. They're the guys and girls on the coalface that are packing the boxes, that are making the widgets, that are cutting the metal. They're the ones that do it day in, day out. So learn from them, and then start integrating your leadership challenges and what you expect from them. Because I think that if anyone goes in and says, right, okay, we're doing this from day one, we're doing this, one, you annihilate yourself. And don't get me wrong, I don't join a company to make friends. I join a company to do a job of work. If you make friends along the way, that's just a bonus.
Yeah.
But I think you've got to lead them. I mean, people say, "Oh, I'm a good leader. I'm a good leader," but again, it's one of those qualities you've either got or you haven't. You can sit there behind a desk all day, shouting and screaming and telling people what to do. To me, that's not leadership.
No.
I think you need to be able to, the first one at the end of the day, to pick up the broom. Not all the time, because you can't do it all the time. But you need to show that the team you're leading, that you're willing to do that. You're willing to get your hands dirty. You're willing to lead from the front. But sometimes, I mean, that's an old saying, lead from the front. But sometimes you can't lead from the front. Sometimes you've got to take a back seat and see the guys in front of you, girls in front of you, and then make a decision on the way that they should be going or not going. So I think that leadership, yet again, is one of those buzzwords that gets thrown about, and there's not many leaders out there, I don't think, personally, or good leaders. Let's just say good leaders.
Definitely. Obviously, a big purpose of us having this conversation is there are people out there that are coming to the end of their time in the military. They've maybe left the military and they're a little bit lost. They might even be currently in their first job or second job and they're just not finding their feet. So I'd just like to pick your brains a bit about the challenges and maybe some tips on how to deal with that. So if you had to compare the working culture in the military versus, you know, civvy street manufacturing, however you want to call it, what would you say are the three either things that are very alike or different? It can be either or, but what would you say is alike or not alike?
That's a really difficult question. First, if they're just about to come out, don't do it. No, I'm only joking. Stay in.
If you have to.
There's no sports afternoons in Civvy Street. That's terrible. One of the things I would say is quite similar. Is the camaraderie can be quite similar. You don't get the same level. I'm not going to lie. You don't get the same level as you do in the military. But I mean, I've worked in places since leaving that I've made some really good friends. I've gone in as the manager. I've gone in as the ops manager or the warehouse operations manager, and spending so much time with them, I can sort of class them as really good friends. Which is great. And that's one of the big things you do miss when you leave the military, that camaraderie. Funny enough, the work level in the military can be a lot more demanding in regards to on the physical side of life.
Of course.
And sometimes, obviously, depending where you are, what you do in the mental side of life. But I think there's a lot more pressure put on you, funny enough, in Civvy Street.
Yeah.
In the army on a Wednesday afternoon is normally classed as a sports afternoon. So you have a bit of downtime, go and kick a football around, play basketball, swim, or whatever. Now, you don't have that in civilian life. So you haven't got that break during the week. And I think civilian life, if you don't turn up for work on time, the military is a little bit difficult in regards to things like that, because obviously you get charged and you get fined and the restriction of privileges and things like that. But in Civvy Street, if you don't do that, if you don't turn up on time, if you don't do your job, you get fired.
Yeah.
So it's literally your whole livelihood can be gone. So I think there's a lot of pressure in civilian life, and I think more so than in some military lives, which is quite strange to say, really. I never thought I'd ever say that. But yeah, it's quite, as I said, it's quite a difficult question, because I can't see really any similarities between the civilian life and the military life.
Okay.
Racking my brains to try and think of one, but I can't.
No, that's fine. No, that's fine. So what about your top 3 tips? So there's someone there that's, looking for that right, opportunity. What are your top 3 tips for someone who's in that position?
First things first, get your CV sorted out. Okay. Sell yourself. Because one thing that military personnel, as we talked about before, notoriously doesn't do is sell themselves. Because everything is light under the bushel type thing. You don't go around bragging about what you've done on exercise or on operations. You just get on with it. So as I said, an old friend of mine a couple of years back, he's a regimental quartermaster, so he deals with everything: combat supplies, water, rations, people that are nights out of bed, weapon systems, clothing. And he said, "Oh, I don't really do a lot." And I said, "You're joking. If you literally sit there and list what you do and put that on a CV, employers will be sort of jumping at your heels." So definitely get your CV sorted out, and definitely put a good CV and sell yourself. That would be number 1, definitely. 2, prep as much in advance as possible. Find or try and figure out what they want to do when they come out. If it is manufacturing, look at what type of manufacturing they want to go into. Put some feelers out. Go and visit some companies. I mean, most companies that I've worked for since leaving, if someone phoned me up and said, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm just about to leave the military. I'm not sure where I want to do, but any chance I could come down, have a look, and maybe have a chat with someone?" 9 times out of 10, if it wasn't me, I'll take one of my supervisors. We've got an ex-squad here, seaman coming in, give them a bit of a tour, show them what we do, and just see if they can relate to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Push the boundary, push it. Don't be afraid to ask. And that comes on to my next one: ask for help. Ask for help. Don't be scared to ask for help. And you'll find that a lot of military people won't do it, because, as we're going back to before, it's that self-reliance, and they'll get things sorted themselves. But sometimes you just need that bit of a leg up, arm around your shoulder, and say, "Well, look, I can point you in the right direction." Although they do get the career transition workshop and things like that, I think rely on your own network, build your own network.
Do you ask for help though? Because again, that's an amazing tip. I can imagine if someone's sitting there and like, yeah, that's great, but
who do I ask? Exactly.
Who would they ask?
We all know. I mean, in the military, you've got a massive network, network. So, in a military, for example, I guarantee you know at least 20 people. Now, within that 20 people, some might have got out. Some might have family members on the outside that you've spoken to before. Reach out, ask your muckers for help. Speak to one of their family members, speak to your own family members. And as I said, if you're interested in a particular thing, for example, a mate of mine works for Amazon. And what he did before he got out, he actually phoned up the Amazon depot, one of the regional DCs, and said, "Look, I'm interested in a career coming to blah, blah, operations, so any chance I can come down for a chat?" As I said, 9 times out of 10, they'll turn and say, yeah, or what they'll do, they'll send an email with information on. But 9 times out of 10, these bigger companies will turn and say, "Do you know what? Yeah, look, come down, let's have a chat, and we can show you what we're all about." Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask. They're the sort of people that if I'd turn back the clock, that's what I should have done. That's what I should have done.
And that just comes back to my point, and you know, I took on board your point earlier when you said when you sign that dotted line, although there's a year, you're still working, so you can't do it. But I do think maybe there's a gap that, for example, and this is what they're doing a lot in the apprenticeship world now, you know,
Yeah,
the big players, they're introducing apprenticeships. I was talking to a lady earlier today, and, you know, they're introducing apprenticeships at the age 8, 12, 13 to start introducing it. So even if there was, you know, a pool that even people could start getting a feel for. So, or even at the point that they leave, they know,
yeah,
okay, these are the big manufacturers. And it's not even that, I mean, the tendency is at the moment, Jeff, if I'm being honest, there are big manufacturers that have this, you know, mapped out and are doing a great job. What I'm trying to do through these podcasts is share some insight to try and allow, you know, those, you know, medium-sized manufacturers to sort of embrace these opportunities and realize it's not as big, but there's
yeah,
just small things I think that could be done that would help both, you know, the people leaving the military but also the manufacturing.
yeah,
And I think
definitely.
it's just not connecting,
Yeah.
or people aren't seeing that in a place. When you did leave, and I know you mentioned you went to a couple of early extra career things, but were there any specific training or certificates that you went on that you thought, do you know what, if I get that, or actually on reflection, you think to yourself, do you know what, if I would have done that, that would have really, really helped me now?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, the difficult part for me was I wasn't sure what I was going to do when I was getting out. As far as I was concerned, it was going to be security. I was going to make a fortune going around the world doing security, buy my house outright, and sail off into the sunset. And then the day come when I actually left, so then things change, obviously.
Yeah,
I think if you know what you're going to do, if you know what industry you're going to go into, speak to one of the guys at the career transition workshop and say to them, I'm interested in manufacturing. What would you recommend, or what is the latest qualification that people are looking for at the moment?
yeah,
And then do that as part of your resettlement, obviously, because that to me, that's common sense. But there's, as I said earlier, there's so many people that are due to leave that don't know what they're going to do.
no,
So they
that
do,
sounds like the piece that it's because they don't know what they're going to do, and it is such a big transition because it's
yeah, a
work and
massive
life.
transition. Yeah,
It's pretty difficult. So I suppose if we just take it to the manufacturing world, and I suppose the impact that the military could have on the
yeah.
skill gap and the labour shortage, what's I suppose your view on how the manufacturing world view ex-military at this stage? What would you say?
Yeah, again, I think that there can be a completely incorrect misconception, whatever you want to call it, of the way that sort of an ex-service personnel would operate
Yeah,
individually.
yeah,
I think that's the biggest one, as we already touched on. Yeah, again, and as going back to the other one was sort of walking in and start shouting and screaming and running around like a mad person. I
yeah,
think that's a massive misconception. That really
yeah,
is. Yeah, it's difficult because, yeah, again, every company's got their own ways and means of doing things. Some companies would get, obviously, recruiters in to do the recruiting for them. Some companies would do their own recruiting. And I think if one of the big things is like yourself, sort of from the recruiting side of life,
yeah,
if they were sort of more pro-military and said, do you know what, if we look at this particular role, this would suit someone from, I don't know, from the rank of corporal or the rank of sergeant, who used it, or an ex-sergeant, ex-corporal or ex-lance corporal, because they've got this. And I think that once that starts getting fed into manufacturing industry and all industries, I think that would make a sort of the mindset change slightly. And I
yeah,
think because, yeah, again, a lot of companies, they put all their faith in recruiting in recruiting companies
yeah,
rather than doing it exactly,
no,
rather than doing
yeah,
it yourself. And I mean, I would. I mean, if I've used a company before to bring staff in, I would get one of the guys to send me I'd expect them to send me the right people in.
yes,
I wouldn't expect just 10 people to come in on one job because that was the first 10 they found. I'd expect the right people to come through the door and then obviously make your decision. So I think a big thing, I mean, one of the things that I've seen over the last sort of couple of years, especially the last 4 years, a lot of companies are starting to recruit more ex-military because they've had an ex-military personnel in there before, and they realise what they can bring to the table, especially in manufacturing.
Yeah, the best is, and where it really it lives and breathes it, is when a manager's come in. So when if you're, for example, I'm speaking to a client and they are ex-military and they are a manager, because they've been on the journey and they know how difficult it is and they know the challenges and they can really relate.
Yeah,
Immediately when you ask them the question, would you consider ex-forces? 100%.
100%. Yeah,
You know, that's another point. I do wonder as well, I'm just reflecting on all the conversations I've recently been having about apprenticeships, and I think sometimes we get so fixated that apprenticeships are for school leavers. I do wonder whether in the future, you know, just because someone's, you know, in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, if you want a career change, there's not to say that someone doesn't have the capabilities or the want or the desire to train in something new. And actually, you know, for example, if they said, okay, we can offer you this, you know, apprenticeship, you know, with all the values, the life experience and everything, wow, I mean, that would just be a finished
yeah.
article.
There's you got to think, you take someone, a military person who's done say 10 years.
Yeah,
A big part of that 10 years is spent training, not just
yeah,
basic training and weapons training, things like that, but it's done his own sort of course training, for example, whatever trade he's in by her. They've gone through their career train. So they spent a lot of time training. So to come into the civvy world, and especially if they've got sort of not many commitments, I mean, it's difficult for someone who's done 15, 20 years, got a family to look after, things like that, to come out, unless they're sorted in regard financially, to come out and completely retrain as an apprentice. 9 times out of 10, I mean, I couldn't have done that. I couldn't afford to do that.
no, of course.
I need a proper job. It's got a mortgage to pay, children to look after, etc., etc., etc. But
Yeah,
someone who comes out of the military without that family ties, let's just say, or
yeah,
are financially secure, I think they relish. A lot of them would relish the idea of a retrain, for example. And I know that I've had friends that have come out and they've retrained. Some of one's retrained as a program designer, completely retrained, ex-infantier. You know, so when it comes to computers and program design, it's the furthest thing from his mind. But he came out and completely retrained as a program designer, and he's been doing it now for the past 5 years, and started to make quite a good living out of it. There's people that come out and retrain and become plumbers, electricians, and that sort of thing. So on that side of life, I think that, yeah, I mean, ex-military would suit that particular apprenticeship type.
yeah. It's just, I suppose, got to fit in the, you know, the stage they're at their life, as you said. You know, if they've only
Exactly
been in a
right.
couple
Yeah,
of years, you know, it's a little bit difficult. So how do you feel the military could positively impact the manufacturing market?
I think that the caliber that you get coming out of the military, the caliber of people, and I don't mean this in any disrespect to anyone, but I think the caliber of a lot of the ex-military people are higher than what you would do recruiting in someone who's not had that particular background. They could have completely the same skill set in regards to what they've done courses wise and qualifications wise, but you're going to get that little bit extra from that ex-military person because they're used to silly things, being on time,
Yeah,
not going sick.
yeah,
It's because it's bred into you, so you've got that reliability factor. And for me, that, I mean, timekeeping is a big thing for me. It really is. I say to my guys, my briefing starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. If they're not on that briefing at 9 o'clock, they're late. As simple as that. And I think that a lot of employers like that
yeah,
because they know that their guys and girls are ready to go at 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, wherever they start, rather than coming at 9 o'clock, dropping bags off, going to the toilet, and then washing their hands, having a smoke, 9:15. Oh, I'm ready to start the day now.
yeah.
But they wouldn't do that at their lunch break.
No, no.
So a lot of employers,
Literally on the second they're out the
exactly
door.
right. Yeah, on the second
Yeah.
out the door. So a lot of employers, they like that type of ethos, you know. And you
I
do get
have to
that.
ask you, Jeff,
Go on.
when someone turns up late to one of your meetings, what do you
Yeah,
do?
I politely ask them why.
No shouting. We don't do that.
Don't shout, don't need to shout and scream, mate. Yeah, again, it's one of those. It's one of those things that you've got to speak to people. You've got to treat people like people, because people have got lives as well.
Yeah,
It could be traffic, it could be childcare, it could be anything.
yeah,
If it's a constant thing, then
yeah,
obviously that's a different conversation.
yeah, no, yeah,
And even if it's a bad thing, if it's a constant thing, obviously dismissal, because why is their time more valuable than someone else's on the team?
yeah,
Because that's the other thing. That's the way I look at it. It's not because I'm a stickler for timekeeping. It's just I look at it and think, well, if I'm here at 5 to 8 every morning and I start work at 8 o'clock, then why can't my guys be here at 5 to 9 every morning and start work at 9? Because they're telling me that their time is more valuable than mine. It doesn't work like that. And that's not fair. Yeah, that's not fair to anyone.
So, I mean, listen, your story, your journey, you've obviously had, extensive experience. So, that I think is great that we can share that,
Yeah,
to show that journey. That, I think it's great how we've spoken about the skills and experience and how that's sort of transferable. And I think, most importantly, I want to be able to share this with people that are maybe, struggling with that journey or are just about to hit that journey, but also my manufacturing contacts that are, maybe they've got that bit of stigma
yeah.
or perception, and just trying to help to sort of break that. And I think the best way is through telling stories and people's journey. Have you got any final thoughts or anything that you feel quite passionate about around the subject? Is there
Like
anything that
Jerry
you'd
Springer,
like
mate.
to share?
Jeff's final thoughts.
Yes, final thoughts. Cool. I like that. I'm going to add that to the end of my podcast now.
Nick that one, mate. I'll let you have that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that plan your resettlement, plan it correctly, sell yourself on your CV, and when you're talking to people, tell them a bit about what you've done in the military, because as corny as it might sound, people are interested, because people don't see it or don't hear it. All they hear is what's on the news. I mean, just a quick dip. My first interview when I left, I think I couldn't go into too much detail, but I spent the first 35 minutes of my first interview talking to him about interrogation.
Yeah.
It was mental. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And I had all these questions written out and all these answers done. I was like, they've not asked me one thing about the bloody job. So talk to them a bit about your background, and sell yourself. And as I said before, don't be afraid to ask for help, because there is help out there. There's people like yourselves. There's other ex-military out there that are willing to sort of give even a bit of advice and say, right, I'll tell you what, mate, I've got someone who knows someone. Yeah, and that's sort of that's the best bit of advice I could really give, to be fair.
Amazing.
Don't be afraid to sell yourself and ask for help.
Lovely. Well, it's been amazing. Thank you for sharing your story with me, Jeff. And thank you for your final thoughts. Thanks for your time.